My parents announced at dinner that my sister would be moving in with me, but the shock on their faces was priceless when I revealed I'd secretly moved out weeks ago. I am 32, and for most of my life, I've been the steady, reliable one in the family. The one who picks up the pieces when my sister's relationships collapse. The one who adjusts his schedule and space so that everyone else can feel more comfortable. The one who rarely complains even when the weight of everyone else's choices ends up squarely on my shoulders. That role has been mine for so long that my parents barely even think to ask anymore. They simply decide, assume, and announce. That pattern revealed itself again on an ordinary Sunday evening. I was sitting at the dinner table, fork halfway to my mouth, when my parents dropped a piece of news they believed was harmless. My mother smiled lightly as she mentioned that my sister would be moving into my place next month. My father, ever the philosopher of family duty, added that I had always been a responsible big brother, and blood, of course, was thicker than water. They said it all with such ease, as if they were discussing nothing more serious than tomorrow's weather forecast. I sat frozen for a moment, my meal cooling on the plate. Inside, I could feel a mixture of amusement and annoyance stirring. The part they didn't know, the part that made this entire conversation almost comical, was that I had quietly moved out of my old apartment 3 weeks earlier. I now lived comfortably in a one-bedroom apartment across town. My new home was peaceful, private, and entirely mine. The keys to my old place were sitting in an envelope in my jacket pocket, waiting to be handed back to the landlord. The irony was sharp. My parents were mapping out plans for a room that no longer existed, in a space that no longer belonged to me. But I didn't correct them. I didn't tell them they were mistaken. Instead, I nodded slowly, made small noises of concern for my sister's situation, and even asked what date she was supposed to move in. I let their assumptions grow. There was something strangely satisfying about watching them invest so much effort into an idea that would eventually shatter. And they did invest. Over the following days, the family group chat became a storm of excitement. My mother shared color palettes and storage ideas she found on Pinterest. My father researched moving truck rentals and compared weekend rates. My sister, playing her role as the perpetual victim-turned-princess, sent messages about how excited she was to live with her favorite brother again. The whole time, I sat in my quiet new apartment, arranging my bookshelves, pouring myself a drink each evening, and reading their messages with a calm sense of detachment. They were planning a future that didn't exist, while I was living the present they knew nothing about. This wasn't the first time my family had decided for me. Over the past 5 years, my sister had crashed at my place more times than I cared to count. Each time, it was supposed to be temporary. Each time, she stayed longer than promised. She would bring drama, mess, and even people who had no business living in my home. I still remember the boyfriend who had no job and no ambition, yet managed to empty my fridge and leave beer bottles all over the floor for 2 long months. I had put up with all of that because my parents told me I should, because my sister needed support. But this time was different. This time, I had already chosen to break the cycle, and instead of stopping their planning immediately, I let them build castles in the air. The moving day came quickly, a crisp Saturday morning. While my family pulled a truck up to my old apartment building, I sat at my new kitchen table, drinking hot coffee and reading the news. My phone buzzed once, twice, 3 times. First, a confused text from my father asking where I was. Then, a call from my mother wondering why my car wasn't parked outside. I let them wait outside for nearly 20 minutes before finally answering. Her voice was tight, a mix of panic and confusion. "Where are you?" "We're here with the truck. Your sister's things are all packed. Why aren't you home?" I took a deep breath, and in the calmest voice I could manage, I told her the truth. "I don't live there anymore. I moved out 3 weeks ago. There is no spare room. I have a 1-bedroom apartment now, and you were never informed because you never asked." The silence that followed was almost musical. Then the explosion began. My mother's voice shot up an octave, accusing me of being selfish, deceptive, and vindictive. My father grabbed the phone to lecture me about family duty and responsibility. In the background, my sister sobbed loudly, wailing about how she had nowhere to go and how I had betrayed her. I listened to their chaos with a calm satisfaction that I had never felt before. For once, their poor planning was not my crisis to fix. I explained patiently that none of them had asked me if I was comfortable with this plan. They had simply informed me, as if my life and my home existed to absorb my sister's mistakes. I pointed out that I had been treated as a safety net for years, expected to rearrange my life whenever my sister needed rescue. This time I chose not to. Their anger couldn't change the fact that reality had finally caught up with them. My sister's belongings sat in a truck, with nowhere to go, because they had assumed instead of asking. I suggested reasonable alternatives, that she could stay with my parents for a while, that they could look into apartments or even extended stay hotels. But every suggestion was met with complaints. My mother claimed their house was too small. My father said hotels were too expensive. My sister declared that every apartment she saw was either too far or too costly. And as always, they wanted me to bend. This time, I didn't. The following week's family dinner was uncomfortable, to say the least. My sister sat in my parents' guest room surrounded by boxes, exhausted and miserable. At the table, my mother made cutting remarks about family loyalty. My father spoke of disappointment and duty. My sister shot me silent glares, her fork scraping harshly against the plate. I, on the other hand, ate in peace. I complimented the cooking, asked my father about his golf game, and ignored the attempts to drag me back into their drama. For the first time in years, I felt free. Weeks passed, and something surprising happened. My sister found an apartment of her own. It was smaller than she wanted, more expensive than she liked, but it was hers. And for the first time, she was forced to rely on herself. She began to budget properly, manage her own emergencies, and even started dating someone who brought stability instead of chaos. My parents, too, changed. My mother admitted one evening that she had taken my reliability for granted, that they had fallen into the habit of assuming I would always be the backup plan. My father later confessed that they had treated me less like a son and more like a tool for fixing problems. Both offered apologies I had never expected to hear. Months later, at a housewarming party my sister hosted in her new apartment, I watched her beam with pride as she showed off the space she had furnished on her own. She spoke of her job promotion, her growing savings, and her plans for the future. My parents looked on with genuine pride instead of resignation. For the first time in years, I saw a healthier dynamic emerging between all of us. Looking back now, I realized that my silence, allowing them to plan that doomed moving day, was the most strategic decision I could have made. I had not only broken free from years of being taken for granted, but I had also forced my family to see what life looked like when they couldn't simply lean on me. The lesson was harsh, but it sparked growth none of us expected. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger, confrontation, or yelling. Sometimes it's quietly moving on, quietly setting boundaries, and letting others confront the consequences of their own assumptions. In the end, that quiet act changed my family more than any argument ever could. And as for me, every evening when I unlock the door to my one-bedroom sanctuary, I am reminded that I took back control of my life. For the first time in years, my space is truly mine, and so is my peace. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.